Namo Buddhaya. Good evening. Welcome to the Buddha Dhamma TV. I am Karen Tan. Today, we begin our program as usual with a Buddhist blessings service. To have the desired calmness, please listen to the chanting mindfully and calmly. Our upcoming segment highlights the psychological teachings of Venerable Bhante Kovida from Canada. He will delve into the deep teachings of Buddhism while persuasively discussing the topic, 3 characteristics of Buddhism. Let us welcome Venerable Kovida as he graces us with his insights. This is the first part of his sermon.
So, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's nice to be back here after many years. If I can remember, my last talk here was on a Sunday in the big hall, and this was 2008. It's a long time ago. But it is nice to be back. And also I've managed to escape another winter in Canada. So it's nice to be back in this warm, humid climate. Now today's talk is a very interesting reflection on the Buddha's 3 qualities or mental defilements. Because there is an interesting relationship between the qualities of the Buddha and or mental defilements. And I find it in my own practice and study that I always find this a good subject to come back to. It's a good point of reflection. Because as human beings, we all have mental defilements. We cannot escape from it because it's a part of our conditioning or education. So even Siddhartha Gautama, before he became enlightened, also had these mental defilements. So where do these mental defilements come from? As mentioned, they come from our education, our conditioning when we are young. Our minds are conditioned to react. We're always reacting. And our brains have been educated, programmed to label and to judge, criticize, compare, sometimes to condemn, to like or not to like, to want or not to want, and to have aversion, hatred and ill will. And aversion, hatred and ill will also includes jealousy, envy, jealousy, disrespect. There's the negative mental states that we have. And it is this conditioning of these mental defilements that create the illusion of a permanent self, the permanent I, which is the root cause of all of our problems and conflicts, including craving, greed, fear, insecurity, worry, hatred, anger, and so on. So as you know, the Buddha was a great, you can say, psychologist and a psychotherapist, because he taught the workings of the mind, because everything comes from the mind, and how we see and react to things. And then he gave this very radical teaching by saying, when you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. Not reacting. Now it sounds simple, but as you know, it's a very difficult, very challenging teaching. Very radical. Because as we said, we're always reacting from early childhood. And it has been said that really our life is based on 10% of events happening and 90% of our reactions. and our reactions is what create our reality. And when we're caught in our habitual reactions, we don't realize that this is where the source of our suffering and conflicts arise. But when we investigate, we begin to see this. Now, as you know, our main defilement is ignorance and delusion. Ignorance and delusion. And ignorance means to cling to the idea of a permanent, separate, independent self. That this I is something which is concrete, fixed, never changing. That is what ignorance is, when we cling to this idea. And as you know, the Buddha was the first person to realize the true nature of this self. Because the belief in a permanent self is a very ancient belief from early human civilization. All the early civilizations believed in this permanent I. And from that belief came the belief in reincarnation. That when this body dies, which it must, this permanent, solid, seemingly independent and separate center of experience will continue into a new body. And in India they still believe this. Now in Buddhism they call this rebirth. But my understanding of rebirth is something very different, but I'll discuss that at another talk, not today. Because I'm sure some people will be very shocked. Some people even get upset when I explain my understanding of rebirth. And for those who get upset, I just remind them that is dukkha, that is the truth of dukkha, the truth of suffering. And that's why you get upset. But I'll save that for another time. And of course, delusion is something which we humans are constantly subjected to, simply by our habitual reactions. We're deluded by our reactions. Sometimes when things are pleasant, we feel very happy or very pleased. But if things are unpleasant, if things say unpleasant things to us, or we're being criticized, then we get upset, even angry. So that's a part of delusion, just by our habitual reactions. And in the Buddha's own life, there were times where he had to face very adverse conditions, but he was able to remain calm, very serene. But he had his challenges, that's for sure. But with great effort and practice, he was able to overcome all the negative, unpleasant adversities. And another aspect of delusion comes from our mental activity, because we tend to think too much. And we believe all the stories, all the dramas, all the worries, the fears that the mind creates. Because you know from experience that the mind is always creating stories, like television dramas, even movies. And we get caught in it because they seem real, don't they? And this is why mindfulness is so important, because when we don't have mindfulness, we're easily trapped and deluded by these mind-created stories. So that's the power of thinking. But with mindfulness, we're able to see that these thoughts are only temporary mental states, mental formations. Now, from ignorance and delusion comes self-centered craving and attachment. Self-centered craving and attachment. Craving includes any form of wanting, desire, expectation. Envy is an aspect of craving also. Expecting something from someone, or expecting someone to behave in a certain way. And when our expectations are not met, you can see that we very easily we become very upset, very frustrated, very disappointed, even angry. And of course, the clinging mind. Actually, one can give an entire talk just on the clinging mind. The power of attachment is very, very strong. The power of clinging. So we'll explore that. And also, from ignorance to delusion comes not only craving and attachment, but also, as we said, all our negative mental states. Aversion, hatred, jealousy, ill will, disrespect, and so on, including resentment. And this is why when we practice the Dhamma, whatever negativity we have, we make the effort to purify those negative thoughts with kind and positive thoughts. The practice of metta. Now, human beings, because we're a result of conditioning, an aspect of clinging is not only to say that this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, the idea of possession, but we all have the habit of identifying with things in terms of me and mine, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. We see it in terms of I, me, mine, and that's why we tend to take things very personally. And now in North America, this is a big problem. People take things so personally. Even things that are not directly related to them, somehow they take it personally. Because the attachment to self-center, is so strong. So they have a great deal of suffering and conflict. More fear, more craving, and of course insecurity. And you find that there are a lot of wealthy people, say in North America, but because they're insecure, because of a lack of wisdom, a lack of mindfulness, they are never satisfied with what they have. It doesn't matter how much they have, they're never satisfied. Even millionaires, you could be a millionaire and you have so much success on the material level, but it's never enough. And the root of it is insecurity. Just like when you cling to certain beliefs, without wisdom, without mindfulness, one becomes very anxious to convert others to your belief. And as you know, the way of the Buddha is very different. It's not about converting others. When the Buddha said, Ehipassiko, come and see. If you're interested, you can investigate, you can read, you can explore, and if you're not interested, you do something else, you go somewhere else. So you have that freedom of inquiry. And clinging also comes from just the nature of thinking itself. Because thinking is related to memory. And this is why we cling especially to unpleasant memories, unpleasant conflicts. Of course, it is nice to have, pleasant, fond memories. But when we cling to unpleasant memories, then you see the mind is disturbed. And as you know from your own experience, you can remember some past conflict you have you had even 10, 15, 20, even 30, 40 years ago, depending on your age. And that unpleasant memory still brings some upset emotion, even anger, or some worry or regret, or even feeling guilty about something you did many, many years ago. That's just the nature of the mind. So there's an aspect of clinging because it's related to thinking and memory. And sometimes having a good memory can be a blessing and it can be a curse. Especially when we cling to unpleasant memories and conflicts. This is why it has been said that happiness is really having good health and a bad memory. The ability to let go or forget, unpleasant memories and conflicts and so on. So there's an aspect of clinging because of the nature of thinking and memory itself. But thanks to the great teaching of mindfulness, we're able to deal with these mental states that cause suffering and conflict. Because everything starts from the mind. Now, what is interesting is when we look at the qualities of the Buddha, you see that there's a very interesting relationship to these qualities and our mental defilements. Now, the main quality of the Buddha is wisdom and mindfulness. Wisdom and mindfulness. They go together. To have right understanding, harmonious understanding, and of course mindfulness, the ability to focus your mind in the present moment. So you see things very clearly as it is. And the second quality is simplicity and renunciation. Simplicity and renunciation. And the third quality is, of course, loving kindness and compassion. Loving kindness and compassion. Now, when you look at these three qualities of the Buddha, you see this interesting relationship to our mental defilements. You see that wisdom and mindfulness is the medicine, the antidote for ignorance and delusion. Wisdom and mindfulness is a medicine for ignorance and delusion. Wisdom, right understanding, overcomes ignorance, wrong understanding. And of course, mindfulness, present moment awareness, attention, helps us to overcome delusion. And you see that simplicity and renunciation is the medicine, the antidote for self-centered craving and attachment. Simplicity overcomes craving, and renunciation overcomes attachment, clinging. Very interesting relationship. And we see that loving kindness and compassion is indeed the medicine for aversion, hatred, ill will, resentment, jealousy, and so on. So you can see that this relationship is very, very interesting and very important. So this is why I like to use this teaching as a good reflection, because it really covers the base or the reason why we follow the Buddha and the Dhamma. Because it's a very, very wonderful teaching. Now, as we said, the ignorance is clinging to the idea of self, or of a permanent self. But when we investigate and we develop right understanding, right wisdom, we begin to see the nature of self. Now, when we first encounter this teaching of non-self or anatta, it can be very difficult, very challenging. Because people will often say, but I exist. You know, I have a family, I have a job, you know, and so on. I exist. So what do you mean there is no self? So what we have to understand is that we all have a self. Just like we all have mental defilements. We cannot escape it. It's a part of our conditioning. But when we investigate the nature of self, we begin to see that it's only a conditioning in the mind. It's not something which is permanent. Not something which is, you know, rock solid, unchanging. And it's not something which is separate and independent from the rest of nature. Because when you investigate the nature, you see how complex it is, an extremely complex web. Maybe another talk I'll investigate into the complex web of life, how everything is intricately connected, intricately interdependent. And scientists who take the time to investigate nature, they begin to see this. And they're able to investigate nature because they get funding, they have good funding. So they can spend the time to really investigate the complexity of life. But normally when we're leading busy lives, we have no time to really sit down, quiet the mind, and investigate, so you can appreciate the complexity of life itself. So it is when we understand the nature of the self, then we begin to understand non-self. And the conditioning of self is based on thinking, and thinking is related to memory, and also is based on the language that we use. Because as human beings, we have to use labels to communicate. I, you, he, she, and so on. So every time we speak, we have to use the word I. And the equivalent in other languages, including, you know, Cantonese, Hokkien, Russian, Italian, and other languages. And because we tend to use the same label I to communicate, it gives the impression in the mind that this I is permanent. And as you know, if you have to speak a lot, just in one day we can use this I hundreds of times, maybe 200-300 times. And because we're saying I all the time, it gives that impression in the mind, in consciousness, that this I is rock solid. It is everlasting. It is always there. We may see changes happening around us, but the I never changes. But of course, when we practice, and of course when we observe some silence, then we begin to see this, that the I is only a label that we are using. It's not something which is permanent. Just like our names. Names are really just labels. Social labels for easy identification. But what happens is that we become so attached to our names, we identify so strongly with our names. If somebody calls us by a different name, or they pronounce our name in a different way than what you're used to, you get upset. I don't know about in Malaysia, but in North America, this happens a lot. People are so attached to their names, they easily get upset. It's like birthdays. If somebody forgets somebody's birthday, it's big drama. Later I'll speak about the illusion of birthdays, because it is an illusion, but it's something we get very strongly attached to. And we have all these expectations, right? Especially if you're close friends and family and your partner. You know, if they forget your birthday, God helps them. Or your wedding anniversary, oh my God. But really it's an illusion. These anniversary dates, it's really an illusion. But as human beings, because we're not awakened, we, our strong attachments give us this suffering, these conflicts that we have. And also thinking, as we said, is related to memory. It's also related to past experience, because memory, past experience are connected, and also knowledge and information. All the knowledge, information that we have in the mind is connected to thinking. And you can see that when you observe your mind. Memory, past experience, knowledge, information. It's actually very simple. And this is something that they should be teaching us in school, but they don't. But it's really simple. It's not rocket science. And I remember one of the questions I was asking was, what is thinking? I was very fascinated by what is thinking. Because we're thinking all the time, but no one teaches us to understand what thinking is. And only when I got to India and met this very profound teacher, he was the first one to give me this insight. It's so simple. And how thinking has that ability to project in the future. You can see that, right? In all our minds we do this. We're thinking about the past or we're thinking about the future. So thinking is a movement in time. From past to future, past to future. All our minds do this. And it doesn't matter what language you're thinking, it's the same thought process. Whether it's Cantonese, Hokkien, Japanese, French, Russian, it's the same thought process, moving in time. And who we are as a person is a part of that movement, related to memory and related to future plans. For example, if you meet someone for the first time and naturally you talk about yourselves, what do you talk about when you talk about yourself? It's all based on memories, isn't it? You know, all your personal history, right? Childhood history, where you grew up, education history, elementary school, high school. And if you went to college or university, you speak about that. It's all based on memory. So who we are, this I, this conditioning of I, is really memories. And that includes all the books you have read, all the movies you have seen, all the television programs, things you have seen on internet, and of course all your relationships, conflicts you've had, happy memories, unpleasant memories, and so on. It's all related to who we are. That's the conditioning. And this is why when somebody suffers from amnesia, temporary memory loss, why it is so confusing and so scary. And so confusing, because when you lose your memory, you don't know who you are. Interesting, isn't it? Because we're so identified with memories, all our past experiences. So when we have temporary memory loss, we don't know who we are. Now, what is interesting, when you practice mindfulness, the way of the Dhamma, and you understand that our conditioned mind, our conditioned state of being is present moment awareness and knowing. You can call it our Buddha nature. or wisdom mind is this present moment awareness. Even if we're suffering from temporary memory loss, amnesia, it won't be as scary and confusing. I wonder if you see that. We might not remember our names or where we live, or who our family is, but it won't be as scary simply because we are more comfortable in the present moment. I wonder if you see that. Because your identity is not so attached to all the past memories and experiences. Yes, we all have them, but it's only the conditioning of the mind. And this is something that the Buddha was awakened to. The whole movement of thinking and its conditioning and the I, the self. And with a collection of all these memories, past experiences, pleasant, unpleasant, we have future plans, future hopes and dreams, and so on. So that is our conditioning based on thinking, because as we said, thinking is moving in time, always moving in time, past and future. This is very simple when you think of it. As I said, it's not rocket science. Very simple, but it's just that we're not taught this in school, and they should. Now, as we said, mindfulness helps us to overcome delusion, not only from thinking too much and believing all the stories that the mind creates, including all the worries, fears, many dramas, like the TV dramas, either from Hong Kong or Korea. I know the Korean dramas are very popular now, right? They're very emotional people, so they make good dramas, the Koreans. I spent time in Korea and I spent time in Japan, and I see the big difference between the Koreans and the Japanese. Big difference. And also, it helps us not to react so easily. When you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. But it takes practice to learn how not to react, especially when someone is being unpleasant. Someone is criticizing you, someone is calling you, unpleasant names and so on. How just to keep calm. And of course, in the Buddha's life, he had wonderful examples of he was able to keep calm. And in my own practice, I found this, whenever anyone got upset with me, it was a good opportunity for me to remain calm. Because you find that when you don't react to someone's unpleasantness or anger, you act as a mirror, where you reflect that person's anger or unpleasant behavior. I wonder if you see that. Because you're not reacting. If you can remain calm and patient, you reflect their behavior. And this is a good practice, especially with family members. Because family members, they know how to push your buttons, right? But when you learn how not to react, you really surprise them. Just keep smiling. Give them the smile of wisdom, the smile of mindfulness. I remember, I think I've had 2 or 3 monks who got angry with me, just over minor things. But they got angry because they were not practicing the right way of the Buddha. They were practicing deep jhana meditations. So when they were not in deep jhana, of course they were like zombies. But when they were not in deep jhana, they were just caught in that reactive, deluded mentality. Because it's so easy to react, because it's a part of our conditioning. I remember once I was conducting a short retreat, Easter holiday retreat in Hong Kong. And you know, they're very, very stressed there, very materialistic. Even more stressed than Singaporeans, believe me. And I was just giving a talk during the retreat, and a young man, he got very upset about something I said. He was from Taiwan, but he was Chinese Vietnamese. So he spoke Mandarin and Cantonese, no English. But I had a good translator, a high school teacher for Cantonese. He just got very upset about something very simple. So I listened to him calmly, and then I said to him, do I know you and do you know me? And he was a bit confused. I says, actually, most of the people here, I don't know. I only know the monk who built this center and my translator, the high school teacher. So because I don't know you and you don't know me, why should I say something specially to make you so upset? Because I don't know you and you don't know me. So he looked a bit confused because he was new to practice, so I could understand, you know. And I said, so the problem really is not what I said, but your reaction to it and taking it so personally. That is the problem. So I said, it's possible that what I said triggered some unpleasant memory, either from childhood, or from school, or from your work environment. And that's why you got so upset. So I realized he was new to practice, so I said, this is what the practice is about. Learning how not to react so easily and not to take things so personally. Because as the Buddha, as what the Buddha would advise when people are in terrible arguments and quarrels with each other, he would often say you have to reflect on the certainty, the truth of impermanence and the certainty of death. Because when we reflect on that, then it put things into better perspective. And you see that all the things that we fuss about and we take so seriously, including arguments and clinging to your concepts, beliefs, views and opinions, they're utterly meaningless when we consider the truth of impermanence and the certainty of death. So anyway, he calmed down. But he was new to practice, so I understood his behavior. So there is a very interesting technique. Some of you might know of it. It's called mental noting. And I've used it myself. When you're caught up in a story or a drama or a worry or a fear, and it seems very real, you just breathe mindfully and you just say to yourself, it's only thinking, thinking, thinking. Some of you know this technique. It's very useful. Because when you do that, it's only thinking, 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 and you come back to the breath, or the feet, or any kind of present moment awareness. It helps you to get out of the story, or the drama. And it makes you realize it's just thinking. It's not real. The mind-created story or drama or fear, it's not real. It only seems real, because that's the power of delusion. But only thinking, 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 very useful. It helps us to get out of it, just thoughts. And as you know, the more we practice, we begin to see that thoughts have no permanent reality. They're just impermanent mental states, mental objects. They come and go. They're like this. So that is the aspect of delusion that we have. Now, simplicity implies being content, being calm and relaxed in body and speech. Now, in the Buddha's time, you can imagine it was very easy for forest monks to be simple. And I see even today it's not easy for monks to be simple. Unless you're living in the forest. But you know, when you're in a big temple, a city, monastery, it's not easy to be simple because you're being given so many things, and of course we have internet and video, and some people have smartphones. By the way, I've never used a smartphone, and you're looking at somebody who have never sent a text. They call me a dinosaur. And in Malaysia, I have to use a cell phone, but I use a Nokia, otherwise known as the dinosaur model. But in Canada, I don't use one. But eventually, I'll have to use a simple phone in Canada because I usually use the public phones because they're still working in Canada, believe it or not. But slowly but surely, they're being removed because everyone has a cell phone now. But I'm still clinging to public phones. But as you know, most countries now, they're gone, right? Yeah. They're either out of order, or they're being damaged, or, and so on. Yeah, so I said, so what is interesting is that even in our modern world, our modern society, we can still practice with the spirit of simplicity. Although sometimes it's not easy. Because as you know, we have so many shopping centers and we have the credit card. And so it means how to spend wisely, how to save money, not to shop impulsively like many people. Many people shop compulsively, impulsively. They can't resist the for sale sign, right? If something is for sale, they have to buy it. And you know, with the credit card, it's so easy. But as you know, when we don't use the credit card wisely with mindfulness, we easily overspend, don't we? So it's really living with more mindfulness. And just to buy things when you need it. But I know it's very challenging, and of course, if you have kids, it's even more difficult. When you have young children, and when children become teenagers, it's even more challenging when they become teenagers because there are so many things they want. But so for those of you who can't resist the for sale sign, you can use that mental noting. When you see the sign, just take a deep breath and you just say, seeing, 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 and you walk away. That prevents you from, oh, I must buy this. Try it and see. I was advising some people in Hong Kong to do this, because you know there are mad shoppers there. And they're very attached to brand name items. You know, they spend a lot, most of their salaries on brand name items, you know, from Europe. And, you know, they're very expensive. And I'm told that even co-workers, they will often compete against each other who can outdress each other with these brand name items. It's quite interesting. And the irony is that in the end, they all end up looking the same. You know, the same style, dresses, makeup, accessories, you know, handbags, shoes, and all that. They all end up looking the same. That is the illusion and the irony of life. Simplicity also means to really sit sometimes and just to be grateful, to have gratitude for what we have. Have gratitude for family and friends, for the kindness of others, to have gratitude for health, for good health. And if you're having health issues, then use it as an opportunity to reflect on the nature of the body. And the body, it is the nature of the body to get sick, to age, to die. Because the body does not really belong to us. It belongs to the changing conditions of nature. It is anatta, non-self. So it's a good opportunity to reflect on this. It's a very important teaching. And of course, if you're stuck in traffic and you feel yourself getting very upset, very impatient, just breathe deeply, smile, and just feel gratitude that you have a car to drive. And you're feeling impatient, do some deep breathing, do some chanting, or sing your favorite song, and learn how to be patient. I've been to Jakarta twice in the last 2 years, and believe me, the traffic congestion there is much worse than here. Because they have over 16 million people in Jakarta. You can imagine there's countless vehicles and countless motorbikes, scooters. But what impresses me about the people there is that they're so patient. They're so patient. And what a contrast to Singapore. And I think so in their wisdom and common sense, they realize if you're not patient, you go mad in that traffic congestion. So you might as well be patient. Just relax and go with the flow. No honking of horns like in some cultures. No road rage. You know that term, road rage? People getting angry while driving. This happens in Canada too.
Happens in Malaysia as well.
Yeah, it's getting here too. Yeah, Toronto is really bad. And it never used to be like that. There's more traffic, people are in a hurry, people are more impatient. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's happening here too. But I was really impressed how patient the people were in Jakarta. Very patient. Yeah. And of course you find that simplicity also has the ability with mindfulness, because mindfulness is related to simplicity, is that whenever any form of craving, expectation, desire arises, you're able to look at it objectively, know that it is impermanent, know that it is uncertain, know that it is unsatisfactory, and let it go. And there's great freedom in that. But that takes practice. And this is connected to the quality of renunciation.
Let's take a short break to enjoy a melodious song entitled Moment of Our Life by Awakenings. This is a very meaningful and devotional hymn. Let's listen to it together with the admiration of the composers.
Sweet religion strive in the warm afternoon of our life, when the road is long and steep. Let us recollect the Master's drive, comforting us we now need. In the cool, quiet evening of our life, life's battle is done. Under the great body let us lie, searching light that brings demand. slow closing night of our life, and there's things we shall not fear. Keep it close to Buddha's light, till Nibbana we draw near.
Now, please join us for our upcoming insightful talk with Venerable Dr. Bande Punaji. Bande's insights are not only enlightening, but also remarkably rational, requiring your attention to unravel the profound depths of his Dharma discussions, entitled Questions and Answers.
What is the most essential way to abandon the five hindrances?
Important way to abandon the five hindrances.
Right.
There is no one way. Each hindrance has to be abandoned separately. Now, to abandon the first hindrance, which is the desire for sensual pleasures, you have to practice what is called the Asubha Bhavana or the Asubha Nimitta. That Nimitta means a mental image, and Asubha Nimitta is a repulsive mental image which is not a pleasant. That is why you have to practice the meditation on the 32 parts of the body. That is the Asubha Bhavana. That is to overcome the desire for sensual pleasure. Now, out of these desires for sensual pleasure, the most difficult one to overcome is the sexual desire. Because the sexual desire starts with a sexual hormone that gets into the blood, and it is that is responsible for this. But the hormone is produced only according to the way you interpret what you saw. So you can interpret what you saw or heard or smelt or tasted or touched. So it is from this sensory experiences that the interpretation begins. And then the interpretation leads to the hormone being activated. So that is how the emotion is aroused. So if you begin to look at the body, it is really this sexual thing starts when you are a baby. As a baby, you begin to experience the sight, the smell, the sound and all those things of the mother. And the mother is seen as the body. It's the body of the mother. And it is that begins the sexual thing. But at the beginning it doesn't come as sexual, it is just coming as sensual. But later, as the body begins to grow, the sensual begins to become sexual. That is how it happens. So, but it is mainly the attraction to the body. And so, instead of looking at the external part of the body, like the skin or the shape of the body, you begin to look at the internal part of the body, what is inside the body, as if you have taken the skin off and you are looking at what is going on inside. That is the meditation. And you begin to think and reflect on the organs inside the body. And the organs are not so attractive. And so that desire for the body disappears. That is how you get rid of that sexual desire. So, then the hormone is not activated. So in the same way, when you are troubled with anger or hatred, then you practice the metta meditation. May all beings be well and happy. Now that is how each of the hindrances, you have to practice that opposite image. That is how you overcome the hindrances. You can't just overcome the hindrances by looking at the breath or concentrating on the breath. That is all nonsense. You see, meditation is not concentrating on the breath. You have to practice different kinds of meditation, especially 5 kinds of meditation, because there are 5 hindrances. For the 5 hindrances, you have to practice 5 kinds of meditation. That is why in that book where I gave you look at that. If you read that book, you get everything in that book.
Can meditation help heal your body, make it healthier?
What do you mean by healing the body? To overcome diseases? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, any problem with your body.
Any problem cannot be cured that way. Because body, when it is sick, It is not the same sickness. There are different sicknesses. Like the different hindrances, there are the different sicknesses. And each sickness has to be cured through the proper treatment for that specific sickness. You can't have what in Sinhalese we call the kokata taile. You can't have just one treatment for everything. If you study medicine, you will know that. You can't have one treatment for everything. You know, the very interesting thing, I think I have to tell you this. These Buddhists, not only in Sri Lanka, even in Burma, Thailand, and other Buddhist countries, they have heard in the sutras. Now a certain monk was sick, and so the Buddha says, what the Buddha does is, he reminds the monk of his meditation. Understand? If he was practicing some kind of meditation, the Buddha reminds that meditation, and the sickness is cured. Now this is very important to understand that. Now there is this well-known sutra called the Bojjhanga Sutra. And this Bojjhanga Sutra is not a recitation. It is a direct conversation where an arahant, you know who an arahant is? An arahant is a person who has practiced and finished the practice and attained the awakening. And an arahant, to attain that awakening, must practice the bojjhangas. There are 7 bojjhangas. Bojjhanga is today translated as
Factor of enlightenment?
limbs of
Factors of enlightenment. 7 factors of
7 factors of enlightenment. But those are not 7 factors. These are 7 steps in the process of awakening. Not even enlightenment, that is wrong. Awakening. 7 steps in the process of awakening. So every arahant has to go through those 7 steps. So this is simply the 7 steps that every arahant goes through. You understand? And now when the arahant is sick, the mind is not very powerful because the body is not powerful. The mind is also not powerful. But the Buddha reminds the arahant of the meditation he did, which is the steps in the process of awakening. When that happens, the mind becomes powerful. And when the mind becomes powerful, it can deal with the sickness. That is the power of the mind over the body. Did you understand that? But today, when someone is sick, the monks go and chant that sutra and imagine that that person will be cured. So they are thinking that this sutra has some magical power to cure sickness. But no one really gets cured. They just chant it, that's all. But there is a possibility that a certain amount of help can be got from that. That is through what is called hypnosis. Hypnosis means that if you hold in your mind, my sickness is getting cured, you have to keep on thinking, my sickness is getting cured, my sickness is getting cured, my sickness is getting cured. Keep on repeating that. That can cure the sickness. That is, the thought can affect the body. And you have also to imagine in your mind, you are getting cured. You are getting cured. That imagination is very important here, the mental image. And that is the power that people use in hypnosis. Hypnosis is a state of passivity. The mind becomes passive, like the mind of a baby. The baby is passive. Whatever the mother says, or the baby will just accept it. So in that way, you are put into a mind of the baby, where your mind becomes passive. And when the mind has been put into that passive state, now you can put your idea into it. You are getting cured. You are getting cured. And you keep repeating that, you can get cured. That is how hypnosis works. Now, when these Buddhists go and listen to the chanting, the monks keep on chanting this spirit. As you listen, you are listening with a belief that this is going to help you. And as you listen to this, you get into a passive state. The mind enters a passive state. And when the mind enters the passive state, and you hold on to the belief that this is going to cure you, can get cured. That is hypnosis. You understand? Yeah?
Has hypnosis been practiced by many people from around the world?
What's that?
Has hypnosis been practiced by many people across the world and for many times? Or for many years? Because like the Christians, for example, they pray And sometimes they say...
Yeah, that also produces the hypnotic state. So most religions and all kinds of worships and rituals and things like that, all those things have a hypnotic effect according to the believer. That can have an effect. But other than that, there is no magical powers. But if you believe in the magical powers, it can. You see, when I was in Malaysia, there was a girl who was brought by the parents. Now in Malaysia, whenever these girls they believe that a devil has entered the girl or something like that. If it is with that belief, they bring the girl to the temple. And what the monks do is they just chant the spirits. And they believe that when the monks chant, it has some power and the devil goes away. But in actual fact, there is no devil here. The fact is there is no devil. But they believe that there is a devil. You understand? So if they believe, if you go and tell them, oh, don't believe in this devil, there is not true and all that, they won't accept it. They won't accept it. Now if I say, okay, I am very powerful, I can chase that devil away, then they believe that. You see, they think the monks have powers. So if you say, yeah, I only have to just put my hand over your head and the devil will go away. The devil goes. It's very simple. So if they believe in certain things, then you can use that belief to get rid of the devil. You know, what I was going to say was, a certain girl was brought by the father and mother, both came, and somehow the monks chanted spirits, but it didn't work. This girl had shivering like this. The girl is shivering. So someone told them they should bring the girl to me. So they brought the girl to me. I said, now I am not only a monk, but I am also, I know the secret behind this whole thing. So I said, okay, come. So I took her into a room where there were tables like this. So I put her on the table. Without knowledge, she entered the hypnotic state. She didn't know that I put her into the hypnotic state. I just said, relax, just relax your body. So when she relaxed, she got into that passive state, you see. So once she's in the passive state, it's only a matter of saying, all your sickness disappears. And all the problems are gone. And the shivering stopped. So I took her to the parents and said, now the problem is gone. If there is anything more, you should bring back again. they never brought the girl back again. I suppose it was all finished. That's how it works. Those days, before I became a monk, I was working in a hospital, and then also they bring girls with this same problem. A lot of girls having these problems. That is, so one day they brought a girl. They said this girl was just lying on the bed and for about a week, lying on the bed for a week. And they did all kinds of magical ceremonies. She was not cured. So I said, okay, now the parents have to go away. Only the girl. I'm dealing with the girl. There can be a nurse or someone like that. And so the girl was there. I have a small trick. There is a certain thing I just hold on to the nose. She can't be sleeping when I hold that to the nose. And she wakes up. Once she wakes up, I said, huh?
She's awakened?
What's that?
Well, it's medicine, yeah.
It's a medicine, yeah. So, when she wakes up, I said, okay, now you are okay now. Your sickness is gone, finished. And I give her something to drink. And just some water or some other thing to drink. And then, now you are cured, you just come out of the bed and stand. So she stands. And then I said, now sit here. She sits. And I talk to her. And those parents are surprised how I managed to wake her up, because she was sleeping for 1 week or maybe 2 weeks. And they couldn't do anything, and all the magic they have performed didn't work. So here I just wake up, and in a minute or two I have taken her out. So one day the mother had come. And she wants to know what really has happened to the girl, what was the sickness. I said, you can't understand these things. If I explain, she might get it back. But the thing is, she has some problems. The problem is that she is in love with someone. And the parents are not allowing her to meet this boyfriend or something. Those in Sri Lanka, the custom is different, you see. Now here, of course, the boy can come and take the girl out and do whatever they want and come back, you see. But that is not allowed in Sri Lanka. So this mother says, no, my daughter is very good. We don't even allow her to go alone to school, and someone always takes her to school. I said, that is the problem. That is what is happening to her. And so that is how you get this problem. So I couldn't explain these things, and they can't understand these things. So somehow they were happy that the problem was finished. So I said, if there is any other thing happening, you just bring her again. But after that they didn't come. Most probably it disappeared. Huh? I have dealt with many things like that. So everything, the thing is you have to understand that it is the activity of the mind, how the mind is affecting the body. That's the main thing.
In addition to the id, in addition to the id, the ego and the superego, in Buddhism there is a fourth sense, right? What can you explain that, please? The Freud had id, ego, and superego, and in.
But the important thing is to understand what is meant by ego, what is meant by superego. What is it?
Yeah.
Without understanding that, if you just take that word and then imagine that there is a real ego there, then it is all nonsense.
So that's why I'm here. So would you mind? That's why I'm here, to learn from you. So would you mind?
The id represents the emotions. That's the important thing to understand. Id is the emotions. And ego refers to the thinking. The thinking part, which the Buddha called chitta and mano. Emotions the Buddha called chitta, and the thinking part he called mano. Now, what Freud called the superego is not another ego. Now, when a mother or father or whoever is looking after the child, small child, now children do all kinds of things which should not be done. So the mother teaches, oh, don't do that, that's not good. Now if the child goes and touches the candle flame or something like that, can burn the fingers, the child doesn't know that. So the mother says, don't do that. So this idea of do's and don'ts get into the mind of the child, you see. And whenever after some time as the child grows up, those ideas of right and wrong, good and bad gets into the mind and it stays in the mind. And that is what you call the conscience. Conscience is that, and this is why when you do something that you have learnt as wrong, you begin to feel guilty about it. I have done something wrong. And so this is why that is the conscience which is also acting unconsciously. You see? It is not happening consciously. You are not even thinking of it consciously. But you begin to feel guilty. Oh, I have done something wrong. You see, like that. That is what is called the superego. That conscience. Because most people are controlled by the conscience. You understand? If you are brought up in childhood, if the parents bring you up in, say, it is not good to steal, you should not steal. So one day you find yourself taking something that doesn't belong to you, then you begin to feel guilty, oh, I have done something wrong. You see, inside, the conscience is always pricking you. You have done something wrong. That is what is called the superego, which the Christians said, that is the promptings of God. So, but the Freud didn't accept that. Freud said it has nothing to do with God here. It is simply your upbringing that produces the conscience.
So is that like sila?
Huh?
Is that sila?
No. That is not sila. But it makes you practice sila. Because the sila, you feel guilty, oh, I have told a lie, and you begin to feel guilty about it. And so, because of that, so you don't tell lies, because you feel guilty when you tell a lie. So like that, so if you are brought up as a child like that, but there are some parents, a child will steal something from somewhere, money or whatever, and come and bring to the mother, and oh, you have stolen something. Yeah, very good. This is good. So if the mother treats you like that, when you grow up, you start becoming a rogue. You might become a bank robber or something like that, you see, because you don't feel guilty. That feeling of guilt is not there. So, that is what is called Hiri-ottappa. The Buddha called Hiri-ottappa. And that is what in Sinhalese they say Lajja Baya. That is what is called Lajja Baya. And that means shame and fear. Lajja Baya means shame and fear. So this thing called shame and fear is the conscience. That is what the Buddha called here what was the word? The Kamopadana, Dittyupadana, Silabbata Upadana. That there the Silabbata really was referring to that same thing, Lajjabaya. That is the Silabbata. You personalize that. This is personalized means you say this is mine. My shame and fear is mine. I feel ashamed of doing this, or I am frightened of doing this. That shame and fear, that is the Silabbata Upadana. And the other one is the Attavada Upadana. Attavada means believing in the self, the idea of self, or the sense of self. So whenever you have a desire, with the desire comes the idea of self. I have this desire. I desire. When you hate something, I hate this. The I is always there. That is the Arthavada. So it is that emotion that is ultimately producing that feeling of self. Those are the four things.
Keeping close to Buddha's light, till Nibbana we draw near.
That wraps up today's broadcast. If you have any questions or concern, please contact us at info@buddhadharmatv.com. We work hard to share the noble, peaceful, and sublime teachings of the Buddha with you, and helping you persuade the spiritual path under his wisdom. Please encourage and support those interested in the rational and enlightened teachings of the Buddha. We believe our programs on Buddha Dharma TV will inspire peace lovers around the globe. Good night. Namo Buddhaya.